Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of If It Is in Love podcast. I am your hostess, Donisha.
And I'm your co-host, JL Whitson.
And we're back, and look at this setup. We have a new setup that my wonderful co-host and fiance has been working tirelessly to put together. I came out of the bedroom this morning and I was like, whoa, okay, a little setup. He's been working on it probably like the last 30 minutes or whatever, trying to perfect everything. And it looks good. So let us know what y'all think about this new setup. I like it. I feel official. You got to stop looking that way.
Sorry.
So we have our TV up here. So it is the monitor so we can see ourselves, but the camera is here. So I had to remind myself the same thing. Like, don't look that way because I'm looking off screen, even though I feel like I'm looking at myself. So yeah, I like this setup. It's cute. I have to make sure I have real clothes on today. I am rocking the I'm gonna clean up later couture. And I'm not really leaving the house attire today. Rocking my bonnet, which I've fallen in love with. Best like $4.
I don't care what you say, Monique.
Whatever Monique says. And let me tell you, the next time I have opportunity to travel, which I don't even think it will be until October or when I get on the airplane, I am definitely wearing my bonnet with some hoops, and that's what I'm wearing to the airport. And I'm not even a bonnet girl. Like, It's not my style, but I don't like telling people what to do. And it is convenient, especially when you have long flights and stuff like that. You want to rest. I don't want to have a coiffed up do while I need to rest on the airplane. It should be comfortable. And as soon as people realize that those types of things that we have to dress respectably and blah, 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 is built in white supremacy, then people will start to let some of that stuff go. I get it. I get why. But the thought that we have to dress this way because people will look. And I'm going to tell you, it's not because I don't fall subject to some of that same thought in my work and stuff like that. But I also like to dress up. So it's fun to me. But understanding that a lot of that is people won't take us seriously unless we dress a certain way. Because I work with, I've seen people who, white people who dress like whatever and are VPs and presidents and bosses and whatever. CEOs and dress like I wouldn't wear that to clean up. Like I don't own some stuff today, but whatever. Also, I didn't comb my hair today. So this is convenient, and I didn't want to wear makeup. So I like this. This is what I'm gonna be wearing for the rest of the day. Dun, 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 dun. It's my cleaning couture. I like it.
I feel like we should have was that red carpet moment? Like, who are you dressed by?
I'm dressed by a beauty supply store.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
That came from the beauty supply?
No.
Okay.
But they sell these at the beauty supply.
Huh?
They sell them at the beauty supply though.
Well.
Yeah, it's a bonnet. And it's silk lined. I'm not going to show y'all because, again, my head is not combed in the inside. I'm just going to pull it out a little bit there. So although every morning I wake up with it on the other side of the bed. Right. I'm like, what do I be over here fighting demons in my sleep? What do I be doing? Tossing and turning, apparently.
Literally.
Because I'm like, what is happening in my sleep where the bottom's at the foot of the bed? I'm like, how did it get down there?
You be fighting covers in the middle of your sleep.
It gets hot and then cold and then hot and then cold. I promise you, every morning around 2 or 3 o'clock, it gets so hot. I could be naked and I'll just start sweating. And I'm like, why is it? Get off of me being naked, focus. Why is it so hot in here? And then like closer to it's time to get up, it's freezing. I still have the fan running, but that's something I just started doing again a few weeks ago. I had gone a long time without doing it.
Yeah.
But I like the noise. Like I like the hum of the fan. I don't need the air. Sometimes I put the air towards me. Sometimes I put it up. I don't need the noise. I enjoy the noise. Like the of the fan.
We'll touch on that because I'm like, why?
It's like white noise. Why I gotta be white? But it's what it is. It's like that noise. So, this week, how's it going? I mean, I know, but the people don't know.
It's going pretty good. Been trying to take care better of my health, even though I had a pizza, a slice of pizza,
and Burger King,
and Burger King. We both
and
had
Chick-fil-A.
We both had Chick-fil-A.
I didn't say I didn't. I just said you just said pizza. Like, oh, I had a slice of pizza. I just wanted.
I mean, but that was like. You know, it was like the Chick-fil-A and the Burger King was a community effort.
Why you gotta put me in? And I tell the people my business.
But I was just craving a slice of pizza. I'm like, yo, weird part is I only ate the toppings.
Okay.
I ate like a piece of the crust, and it just didn't hit like I really wanted it to because like I wanted some Italian fiesta.
Oh wow.
But I mean, overall, like I am feeling better because like I started my new schedule that I set for myself. So I'm technically working on classes only 2 days a week, and then got some projects off my plate, and had a stern talking to with my mom about me not working on the weekends and stuff like that, or her not adding to my project list without me knowing about it and stuff like that. And, it's just good old fun adulting and all that good stuff. It's like, how like you feel like you become the adult in certain situations, like not necessarily with the scheduling or anything like that. Like sometimes I catch my mom like in the backyard camera of our house and whatnot. And she's bringing in like, McDonald's sweet tea and
you have to parent your parent.
Yeah, I'm like, lay off the sugar.
See, this is because you be creeping on your mama because you watch her house. I don't know what's happening in my mama's house. I just send my prayers and well wishes her way. So,
I don't know,
but I get parenting the parent. Like, yeah.
Well, I have like most of the time I'm checking because like sometimes she comes in late and across the alley are abandoned houses and stuff like that. So I'm like, yeah, let me go ahead and just check. But then I'm like, lay off the sugar. You bringing too much extra sweet tea from Pure Leaf in.
You're awful.
Or a whole Italian Fiesta pizza and I'm not there.
Stop minding your mama business.
Anyway.
Right. Let her live her best life.
But yeah, other than that, I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing good. I started my first week at my new job. So it was different. It was a short week because it was the holiday week. So it was 4 days. I spent a lot of time just getting to know people. I'm still setting things up. I actually got a lot of things done considering it was like 4 days in terms of like decorating my office, getting furniture moved in my suite, and just getting everything kind of like updated. So there's still a few things that I need to do. The commute is something I have to get used to. And it's not because it's a long commute. It's honestly not the longest commute that I've ever had. When I first moved to Houston, my commute was 50 minutes. Well, let me take that back. When I first moved to Houston, the first job I had, it was like 16 to 20 minutes, but it wasn't that far. And it was no highway. I didn't have to get on the highway at all, but just going through the streets, morning traffic and everything. And then when I got my second job, when I moved to Houston, the commute was 50 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. But typically it was an hour, right? It was because I would leave at 7:10 and I'll try to get there by 8 o'clock. But sometimes there were accidents. So I would give myself, it's like, oh, if you get there between 8 and 8:15, you're fine, whatever the case is. So, and that was it. But I moved down the street from my job. So for 2 years, just about, I was 8 to 10 minutes away from work. And then the last year, there was almost zero commute because most of the time I work from home. Even when we first moved, we were supposed to be like halftime, but for the most part, I still worked at home. There were a few days a week that I went into the office. And so that commute was like 30 minutes. But like even when we first moved, I was working from home. So there was no commute. And so now going back to, it's about 40 minutes to an hour. It's been raining in Houston.
Yeah.
Like
Every day.
Every single day for the last almost 3 weeks at this point, because I think it was raining even when I was there in June. So it's been raining for almost 3 weeks. Some days like all day, but definitely every morning. I think this is the first morning that it has not rained like at all. And it's not just like it's drizzling. It's been like big, heavy, dark clouds. So I really feel like that's been pulling my emotions down. And I've been trying to not. But the only thing you can do to stay out of the rain is to come inside. And it's, and I really I was like, embrace the rain, because there were a few moments where it was sunny outside. And I really appreciated those moments because it had been raining. But then it just kept raining. So I was like, okay. So kind of getting used to the commute, getting used to being on time for work, being out of the office or being out of the house, being fully dressed. That's the other thing too. I like to get dressed, but I haven't been fully dressed at 7:00 in the morning. So being fully dressed out of the office, being out all day, not coming home until 6 or later. And it's not something that is foreign to me, but it just hasn't happened in such a long time. And it hasn't really happened in our relationship at all. So getting used to that. Because when you first moved here, we were living around the corner from my job. So I came home for lunch almost every day, unless I had a meeting or something. But even then, that would be maybe once every other week or something like that. For the most part, I came home every day for lunch. And even if I went to the gym afterwards, I came home first to change and then I can leave back out. And now that's not the case because I actually passed the gym to come home. So if I'm going to go, I would go before I came home. So it's a lot of getting used to at one time and just being in a job where I have more responsibility, where I'm a director. So there's a lot more expectation in terms of what you produce and things like that. And I think it just goes counter to a little bit to what I have been leaning to for how I want my life to be run, in terms of wanting to lean into rest and not doing the most. And what I realized is I went from this space where I was forced to relax, and I don't relax well. We've already established that. But I was forced to learn how, and I was forced to learn how productivity isn't king, and the quality of my work means something, and I don't have to do everything. And balancing perfect and good. Because I would say, something is good, meaning it's perfect. And that's the standard.
Right.
And if it's not perfect, then it's not good. And getting out of that mentality and then just having the space to kind of breathe, go with the flow in my day. It doesn't mean that I didn't have meetings and deadlines and all those kinds of things, but it definitely wasn't as harsh. And then the world was closed. So you had a lot of limitations on what you could do. And then the world just busts back open.
It's
wide open like a hole on Saturday night. Just bust open. And I have to go back into this world, full blast, into this new role where the expectation is that you produce. And the old me would be so much more yes, gonna do. And this version of me is not so much. And it's not because I'm not happy, right? It's not that I'm not happy. It's not that I'm not excited about my job. I mean, I applied for the job. So went through all the 4 interviews and everything. So it's not that I don't think that this is going to be a good fit, but I'm definitely struggling with at least what my perception of what people expect of me and what I am prepared to make this role and what I'm prepared to give. And also in my life, like what I want. I had to remind myself, like I had said all of this stuff at the beginning of the year about leaning into luxury. And I find myself going backwards sometimes. Like today I was like doing the grocery order and I kept thinking like, oh, I could just go pick it up or I could just go to the grocery store. And I was just like, pay the extra money, have them delivered. That's what it's there for. Don't stress yourself.
I think it's also possibly because of our last two. You think it's also because of the last two encounters we've had with grocery delivery? That's making you think that too?
Well, it was just that one encounter. It was all in one day. It was the one encounter. I mean, and I'm saying one because it was one order. It was one order that they just couldn't get it right. But I have to also say, okay, in the grand scheme of things, that was one time out of all the other times. I've done it at this point, at least 10 times. And it's always been fine.
Right.
So this one time, it was bad. But like also just being like, it's so crazy. I was telling someone like I don't focus well in clutter and I didn't have time to like clean up last weekend. So it just didn't get clean. And I just feel like even when I'm at work, my mind is like, it's not clean. And let me be honest, the house is not a mess. It's not a mess. I think my standard of like what everything needs to be in its place, it hasn't been, and just haven't had taken the time to like sweep and mop and dust and whatever. And like, okay, I want to do that today, but like also have saying like, I was like, oh, I'm gonna utilize a cleaning service, and I have not done that at all since we moved here, and we've been here for almost 4 months, and I haven't done it. And I was just like looking around like, oh, we stopped decorating the house and like blah, blah, blah. So I want to get back into that space, right? And also like we're doing wedding planning stuff, and I just feel like I've been doing so much like looking, I need to like pull the trigger on some stuff, just go about it, but not overwhelm myself with it, right? Because I want it to all be enjoyable. And so trying to find that, figure that out. There is a strengths assessment that we take, and I took at work. And we're going to do a training on it in a few weeks or, next week or whatever at work. And I've done it at my old job. And so I knew my strengths. My top strengths were communication, competition, achiever, individualization, and activator, in that order. And so they were like, well, you should take it again because we're going to do it. And I was like, well, no, I know what. My last job, we were really about doing everything based on your strengths. And the idea of the strengths assessment is we are going to rely on our strengths and not our weaknesses. And so what you do is you lean into your strengths and you just get really good at leading and operating out of that. You don't worry about what you can't do, right? Because you're about what you can do. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, I know. And they were like, so I was like, well, I got the book. Maybe we'll do an episode on that one day. So I was like, well, I'm going to do it. And I retook the assessment thinking, last time I took it was 3 years ago. So I can't necessarily remember all of my responses, but I was just answering them to how they meant to me. And I realized it changed. So my top strength used to be communication, and now it's positivity. And then communication and competition. So that's still there, which I found out competition is actually a fairly rare strength to have. Competition, input, which is a new one, and then activator. So individualization and achiever is gone 100%. Like they're not on my top 5, right? So there's 34 strengths. So it could, maybe achiever is number 6 now, right? But they only show you your top 5. So it's funny though, that my top 3 strengths is now off my list completely. Mm-hmm. And now I have this positivity strength as my primary strength when it wasn't on my top 5 at all. And so I'm still doing some more research to it, but I don't know, like, kind of like how the positive, it's kind of like you're glass half full kind of person. Mm-hmm. And what I learned is sometimes when you have these bigger life events that happen, it will make your strengths change, or sometimes they reorder. They said oftentimes when men get married or they have children, their strengths will change. And I thought about it. I think this last year of leaning into rest, it made sense that achiever was off because I was very like, gotta do everything, and I want to win and achieve, and competition is still a strength. So there's some of that in there, but that desire to, or that thought that I'm always have to be on top and I have to participate in everything is not there. Because I'm leaning more into my rest and overall well-being, that I'm not at an achiever mindset, and just kind of saying like that's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean I don't do good things. It doesn't mean that I don't have achievements, but that I'm not leaning towards that. I'm not guided in that way. And then the positivity makes sense because I think in our relationship, I think that has led me to be more positive, to just being like, I'm like, we can do whatever we put our minds to. And I'm just like, I'm that, like, and I find myself being kind of like trying to cheerlead myself and cheerlead us together and cheerlead you. And so I think that part has really kind of like taken over. And again, in this last year, trying to find the positivity in situations where it could be hard to do that, and really being grateful for stuff that I already have. So I know I've said a lot, but that's how my week was. And I had some days that were rough. I came home and I was just like, I just want to go to sleep. I just want to lay down. I just want to do nothing because I was so drained, smiling all day and mingling, and really didn't realize like how passively it was raising my anxiety levels, like having to be in contact with so many people, and then just be like, hand sanitizer, right? So
I should have. I was almost that in the movies yesterday.
Yeah. So it's a lot. And kind of giving myself the space to be like, it's a lot and that's okay. And I don't need to feel bad about it. And that's probably the hardest part for me, because I'll be like, it's a lot and why can't I get over it? And So that's how my week has been. I'm excited for a new week, but all of this wanted me to have a conversation about imposter syndrome. And I know that we've talked about it before, but I kind of wanted to go into it in a little bit more detail because I really feel it for myself lately. I really feel like, I don't know if I was ever as susceptible to it, but I feel very like, oh, should I be here? Should I be doing this? Da, da, da. So I want to give a definition of imposter syndrome, which is a concept describing individuals who are marked by an inability to internalize their accomplishments and a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. So kind of the thought that not identifying with your own accomplishments, like that's a big part of it, and feeling like, oh, I did this, but really highlighting all the things you did wrong in that, even when you did something well. And there are 5 types of imposters, and I got this information from Stephen Lewis, who is a psychotherapist. And so he does a lot of therapy in getting people to overcome imposter syndrome. And so he has these 5 types of imposters. So I'm going to read them, and then we can kind of just dissect them and talk about them. Like if you see yourself in any, if we see one another, if there are other people in our lives, and necessarily have to put their business out there, but to say if we recognize this. But so that's the other part of it. Like there are types of imposter syndrome, right? Types of imposters. So the first one is the perfectionist.
Why are you looking at me like that?
I didn't say anything.
But you looked at me.
I'm looking at you because you're my co-host. Okay, so the perfectionist, they micromanage, they have difficulty delegating, they set really high bar, and they think everything is either perfect or trash. The focus is on the process rather than the progress. That is, they get stuck on how something happened and minimize what actually happened. So, what are your thoughts on the perfectionist?
Oh, okay.
You feeling the kind of way because you feeling the kind of way. That ain't got nothing to do with me.
No, we've had this conversation before. So
okay, but this is what's on the paper. I didn't. It's more. This is just what's on the screen. I didn't.
I know that I am a perfectionist, which is, not necessarily healthy. Like even just setting up this whole little situation for our podcast, like I was basically getting flustered and because it wasn't looking right to me. It was like, it just it wasn't going how I wanted it to go. Like even in my design process, like like when it comes to like book covers and everything like that, like I'm like, like if this doesn't look right or a certain way that I wanted it to look, or if this picture isn't going the way I wanted it to go for the book cover and stuff like that, I just feel like it's trash. Or like sometimes like the author or the client will love it to death and everything, like, oh, this is really great work, really, really great work. Or even some people who are in book cover design that I've shared my designs with. And they're like, no, this is a really good cover. Like, what's wrong with it? I was like, maybe the it could be a different font. Maybe the title could be shifted over just a little bit. Maybe I could do something different with it. It's like, and I basically talked myself into a whole negative mindset throughout that whole process. Like, cause like, I'm like, once it's printed, it's printed. So I don't know. I want it to be as perfect as possible.
Is perfection possible?
No.
So if perfection is not possible, according to you, then why aim for impossible?
I have no idea.
Okay, just something to think about.
I can't really explain why. I can't really explain why my mind goes through that.
I know, but I'm saying, and I think sometimes we can't explain because we don't think about it. But if you're thinking about it and you're saying, this is not attainable, I am then setting an unattainable goal, according to what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. I got nothing on that because, like, I can't, like, I've actively thought about, like, why do I feel like, like, it's, what the outcome is perfect enough for the client right then and there. But I'm always wondering if I'm doing, like, okay, so when I get into design, I get in late, and like I wasn't the person who spent time like drawing characters, or I was always the person who wanted to just be involved in like how computers were built and stuff like that. I never saw myself as a graphic person until like I started like getting more into the arts, and I noticed I started spending more time with it. I'm not sure like what happened along the way where I stopped focusing on just like, oh my God, I'm learning this. Oh God, this is dope. Like this is something that I've learned that's new and everything like that. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now it's time to try to do it the right way. Because like there are certain times where like I felt like I didn't, because I came in late, I was basically trying to make up for lost time. So like I basically like slid through a lot of stuff like without fully understanding it.
So when you say came in late, what do you mean?
Well, okay, so like it wasn't something that I originally thought I was supposed to, like, that I wanted to do at first. Okay. Like according to how I felt my timeline was supposed to go, or stuff changes. But originally I was an English education major. I wanted to be a teacher and everything like that. And then what was that? I want to say 2015. That's when actually it was a little bit before that. That's when I decided to switch over to graphic design.
So why is that late? But why is it? How does your age when you start a career determine like how successful or?
It's not a matter of successful. It's like, you know, the learning curve.
Okay.
Like, because for me, like right now, I'm in UX design class and everything like that. I'm like, even right now, I'm having a hard time retaining some of the knowledge that I probably would have been able to like do when I like in my early 20s or something like that, or when I was basically having the mindset to be in school. Like, yeah, I love learning stuff and everything like that, but especially with the way education is going right now, like everything's virtual and stuff like that. Like, I don't really learn like that. But I felt like especially at that time, like if I probably would have just got a head start on it, like, or really, because I knew I was gearing into the whole graphic design portion and the arts portion, but I was basically hesitant because of the fact like, yo, I have so many credits in English.
Right.
So that's why I felt like I wasted so much time with that.
Okay. So I'm going to say something that sounds like therapy-ish, but I'm saying it because, I mean, for everyone who doesn't know, my career is in career services and workforce development. So I always talk to people about like that kind of thing. And just really what I would tell any of my students is that there is no such thing as like a late start. And sometimes, and I think, and I say this to you in a way that I would say to myself, when we have this story, right, that we are committed to, it makes it sometimes a lot harder to progress. It impedes our progress because we're committed to this story. And if you're committed to the story of you started late, so you're behind, so you're always playing catch up, you're always going to feel like you're playing catch up. And everything that you said, everything was, I feel like, and it's valid, right, to how we feel. But a lot of what our feelings are, we control. So when you're setting yourself up to say, I feel like this, is because you're committed to this story of I'm starting late. Mm. That's your story. So you're never going to catch up because you're always late. So you have to, I think, in my mind, you know, if you were one of my students, I would say, change your story. Mm-hmm. To you started when it was most appropriate for you. I always talk about transferable skills. There are skills and knowledge that you have that students who didn't take any of those courses that would lead them to become an English teacher don't have. Mm-hmm. You have, as an author, you have a way with words, especially written, that a lot of people don't have. True. That you can that I've seen you use with your clients in terms of being able to capture what they want, mm-hmm. right? You're able to take words and turn it into art and graphic. And I know that as a person who's been like, hey, this is the idea that I have, mm-hmm. and be like, this is a feeling that I want to give. And then you creating that when I couldn't tell you, draw this, I say, this is what I want. And this is the kind of message that I want to convey, and you can do that. And I think that sometimes your story has to change. And if you're committed to, if you are willing to erase the I'm sorry late story, it may have a positive effect in terms of that, right? And nothing is overnight, right? I was giggling because some of the perfectionist stuff, like when we were setting this up, literally I'm afraid to touch this microphone, y'all, because how he precisely like set it up. It was like 17 different ways first. And I could see you get frustrated because then you was moving so much, then you start sweating, then you mad, you gotta turn the air off. Just like, I'm just gonna sit here and just be like, okay, you move to the left a little bit, move to the right. What are we gonna do? And I get it because you want everything to come out right. And I don't see the perfectionist in myself as much. There's some of it. Definitely like sometimes difficulty delegating because I will hold on to that if you want it done right, do it yourself. Mm-hmm. Right.
Same here.
And so sometimes that can be hard. I've had the perfectionist mindset and kind of how we live how our house is done. And I've had to get out of that because one, then I rob you of like having ownership and responsibility over how things work in our house. And also then I put so much undue pressure on myself to make sure, is this clean? Is that done? Is this fixed? Is that whatever? And not just being like, hey, I need your help. Can you do this with me? Can we whatever? And having those conversations. And so I get that, but it's funny. And so what I've learned is sometimes if you get so caught up in that, then you don't do anything. When I realize that sometimes if I'm waiting on it to be perfect, it's either perfect or nothing. What is that? It's perfect or trash. Then I end up with so much trash and I never do anything because I'm waiting on it to be perfect, which we've already established is not attainable. So just something to think on.
Well,
huh? I send this to you.
No, I was like, well, my phone's up there. I think I definitely have a hard time delegating anything. Well, not anything. Like, because like even if I'm thinking about asking you to do something, I'm like, shoot, I'm right here. I might as well just do it myself. But as far as like when it comes to like design stuff or anything like that, like hiring out to, like, say if I'm swamped with like design projects, or even sometimes my mom will like, what can I do to help you? I'm like, don't get me wrong, my mom tries, but she's not going to do it to the quality that I want. Or she doesn't pay attention to the detail that I would like. So I'm like, I might as well just do it by myself. At least. Had the Herbert whistle from Family Guy. But
yeah.
But like I need to get out of that because like of the fact I get swamped with so many projects and everything like that, where like I'm delegating even just my calendar and my project list to Angela, and it's like it's helped and everything like that, but like delegating some of the rest of the work, like maybe it's somebody who can tackle like minor projects that I can get off my plate and basically trust them with, but also like figuring out who I can connect with to that has a good design aesthetic and all that stuff like that, where I can get some of this stuff off my back.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what got to be done. And again, it's like playing to your strengths, right? Like I might be, what's that book? I can't think of the book that I read. But it was like your zone of excellence versus your zone of competence and your zone of genius. And you want to do the things that are in your zone of genius. And sometimes we get, we're like so stuck in like doing the things that are in our zone of competence or our zone of excellence. And we don't have the time to do the things that are in our zone of genius because you're just doing the stuff that you can do because you're doing all of that kind of bottom of the barrel surface stuff that you're not going to have time to get into the things that you are really good at that ultimately are going to be like your money bringers. Those are ultimately going to be the things that bring you the most satisfaction and all of that. So I want to make sure that we have time to touch on all of them. So the next one is the soloist or individualist. They need to do everything by themselves, help reduce the significance of the accomplishment, and needing help is a sign of failure. So that is the second type of imposter.
I feel like I have a bit of that in as far as like being an author, because I had not necessarily a lot of help. So like when I first started writing, it was like my first book was based off an English assignment and everything like that. And I was like, somebody actually had to tell me that I write very well, or I can tell a fictitious story very well in like for creative writing and everything. And of course, like I had my editors, my mom, who's also an editor as well. Of course, publishers that went over it and everything. Even in my second book, and then I got nominated for the NAACP Image Award. And I feel like sometimes I feel like I didn't earn that nomination. Because even though like this is how it all goes in publishing, like you have the editors, you have the people like saying like, what if you said it this way? What if you write it this way? Or what if this character did something different and stuff like that? It doesn't feel like it's you after a while. Even though technically the base of the story is still you. I just felt like everything that came after that, like how much of it was really me, or how much of it did I really contribute after a while. But that's probably another reason why like I don't talk about like the accomplishments with that a lot. Like that whole time when I was like starting out being an author, especially at that age, like I didn't realize the significance of it. I didn't realize the importance of it. But I think I definitely have that soloist or the individualism part of it because of the fact, I guess for me, it just didn't feel like it felt like I didn't earn it.
Yeah. But a lot of people, so we went to the movies yesterday and we went to go see Black Widow. And anybody who's going to see a Marvel movie, you wait till after the credits are over because they always have end credits that have like an extra scene in which really will allude to what the next movie might be, or it might just be something funny because not all like some of the Iron Man, it doesn't even have like a next thing, it just has something funny at the end. But in between that, right, when you watch the credits, so we think of this movie and is the Russo brothers, so you think of Marvel and,
well, I don't know,
right, is it
did Black Widow? Maybe
it was the other one. But just say, like, you think of like the Russo brothers, or you think Marvel. And then if you're thinking Marvel, you're thinking like, depending on the movie, like for Black Widow, you're going to think Scarlett Johansson because she is the star. If you're thinking Iron Man, you're going to think Robert Downey Jr., whatever the case is for the different movies. But we sat there and there was easily 500,000 names that came up, without which any of those individual names, that movie would not have been that movie, right? There are things you don't know where it's like key grip. I still really don't know what that job is. But the key grip, there was a leatherman. There's a person who their job was to make sure all the leather in the movie was right. Right? Because maybe you get the wrong leather and it doesn't have the right thing. So, but at the end of the day, some of those people don't get the credit because it all goes, this is a Russo brother thing. This is their thing. So even when you get all of that assistance, right, to get this great finished product, it doesn't take away your ownership of it, right? Because the responsibility also goes, if it sucks or if people don't respond, let me not say if it sucks. If people don't respond to it in the way that you intended, then it's on you. It's not on those people who contributed to that.
Sure.
So, I mean, I get that. I don't know if I have that as much. I think the needing help sometimes. I think I definitely like to be in control of stuff. So, okay. The Superman or Superwoman, they find downtime wasteful. They're always producing, I'll sleep when I'm dead, looking to next accomplishment, rarely spend any time acknowledging what they've accomplished, feels like a failure if they don't perform at optimal levels in all roles, usually juggles multiple roles and has to do them all well. I know this is me. You don't need to look at me. I know this is me. I know that's me. I know. I will say, I think I have gotten better because that I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah. I'm going to sleep.
You have no problem going to sleep.
And I used to be like, and it doesn't mean that sometimes I'm really enthralled in something I'm doing and I'm going to stay up. Right. But I believe in getting my sleep now. And I need more sleep than I did when I was younger. So I'm going to sleep. Finding downtime wasteful. I'm getting better at that. I'm really trying to realign. I told you this last year has changed a lot of this. I think if this was me a year ago today, maybe a little more than a year ago, because probably like in March before COVID and everything. And I feel like I hadn't really started to embrace it until maybe around this time or August or September of last year. So if you had asked me that like a year and 3 months ago, 100% all of this, 100% probably. Especially I think looking to next accomplishment is something I still struggle with. I told you earlier this week, I was just telling Lauren when I was on the phone with her, I just have a hard time. Like, I don't know what the allotted time to celebrate your achievements should be. And sometimes I feel like, I went out to eat and I celebrated that. So now on to the next. Like, I got this new job and I was typing an email and I was just looking at my email signature and I was just thinking of like, man, I did this thing and I'm really not like, I'm so into like what I'm going to do next. I started looking at like doctoral programs because I know we talked about that like before. And so I'm just trying to think like what's a good time to start. And what I'm learning is I don't think there's any good time to start a doctoral program. Probably post-wedding would be a good time to start. I don't know. Because there'll always be a thing. Because then I think, well, we're going to have kids. Do I want to be pregnant when I start my doctoral program? There's always going to be a thing. There'll always be a thing.
Yeah.
But just something to think about. And they usually juggles multiple roles and has to do them all well. Yeah, that's still definitely me. I feel like sometimes I don't want to do things if I'm not going to do it well.
I've gotten out of that a little bit. Like, especially honestly, whenever I'm dead. I used to be that person who would stay up till 7 o'clock in the morning. Now I'm taking my melatonin to go to bed and everything like that. But generally, like, that's when like all of my great ideas came out and stuff like that. So that's normally why I would stay up. So it's not, I don't know if that was really me.
No, I don't think this is you at all. Because you stay up late, but it's not like you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning and then going to bed at 7 o'clock. You're just a night owl. I think by nature. I think the nature of your work now has shifted you to need to
in age.
Well, yeah, it's shifted you to need to go to bed earlier and to maybe wake up earlier. It's because it's the nature of your work, right? If you're 100% entrepreneur, and even if you're 100% entrepreneur, like your clients aren't up all times of night necessarily. And some of them are up in the morning and that's when you need to connect to them. So you got to be up. So I think that just, yes, age, but also just growth and growing has put you in a position where the night owl isn't as conducive to your livelihood in your life. But I don't think this is yours. You're definitely the perfectionist.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that this is me in terms of, and that's kind of, I've been trying to, like I said, to look at my downtime as restorative more than anything. Like, this is the time that I need to be at my peak. I've been working on not always producing, but also just having that I don't want to not produce. And so trying to find the balance in that. Simplifying things. It's funny because it kind of, going back to the individualist, like some of that, and on my wedding planning stuff, one of my maids of honor, my best friends reached out and was just like, I know you have ideas for what you want to do for like your bridal stuff, but can you let us do this for you? She's like, how about you just give us an outline of, because I just have a very specific idea of what I want things to look like. And I did to her, I don't want them to not look like that. And I never want somebody to be like, well, my finances don't dictate that it can look like this, that my da-da-da-da. I'd rather do it myself and have what I want. But she's also like, we know you and we want to do this for you. So you can give us an outline of what you got to have, what you absolutely want, and then let us do this for you. And so it's so funny that, I mean, I'm grateful that I have friends that could tell me, we know your brand of crazy and we get it. And we also just let us do this for you. And you don't have to feel like, and it's funny because I've been reading I told you I'm in all these like wedding groups, and people just talk about these wedding horror stories, and a lot of them have to do with like their bridal parties, and like people just flaking out on them and not doing what they're supposed to, and not realizing the financial obligations with being in the bridal party and all this other stuff. And it just made me like, and I don't believe any of my friends to be these people or to be like these people, but I'm sure none of these people thought that that either. But it's so funny because I feel like sometimes I'm like, okay, I gotta remove myself from this because it is triggering all this not rational thought about it. And also like sometimes that kind of stuff makes me feel like I gotta do everything and I gotta do it right. And I think I would suffice to say that a lot of Black women, especially in their career where they're in positions of power and all of that, will have, if they struggle with imposter syndrome, will have the superwoman imposter syndrome, because it is. When I was getting ready to leave my job, my former boss, who I view as a mentor, and she's like a big sister and she's a friend, was like kind of telling me, how proud of me she was. But there was also this like, you're in this space that's a largely white space, especially in leadership. And now I'm this Black face, I'm this young Black face. And kind of how I have to do it for everyone. Right. And the pressure that is on to perform well, to do everything with excellence. And I was hearing her and I got it because it's the Black girl speech we give all Black girls. But I was also just like, and I think it really like fueled this feeling that I have in terms of like imposter syndrome, because now I'm like, okay, I gotta do everything. And I'm trying to be a lot kinder to myself in terms of, I'm like, okay, I look at my to-do list and I'm like, okay, you got to whittle this down. You can't do everything.
Right.
And so stop attempting to do everything, because then when you only do, I'm the person who does like 50-point to-do lists weekly. And then I do 20 and I feel like I'm so unaccomplished, but I am not taking into account that I did 20 like projects or things, even if it's like, oh, I need to clean up, I need to meal prep, I need to send these emails, I need to call this person, I need to go to this event. And like you do 20 of those and still feel unaccomplished because you didn't do 50.
Right.
And so it's like, well, if you only set yourself up to do 20, then you've done everything that you set out to do for the week. So kind of finding that balance. So the Superwoman is the one I'm working on. Okay. The fourth one is the expert. Always seeking trainings to validate knowledge. Has to meet every requirement in order to apply. Always feel like they don't know enough. Yes, that is you. Definitely the last one, I think. Always feel like you don't know enough.
Yeah. Like, okay. So I think the main reason why I felt that way is because like there have been times where, like, granted, I should look at this the other way around. But like when I got to one of the schools that I attended outside of Fisk. So when I switched over to started switching over to graphic design, or started doing more graphic design classes and stuff, the professor that I had, I knew more than he did. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how in the world is that even possible right now? Like,
oh, that's why you said it should be switched. Okay.
Yeah, like it should be switched. Like I should be thinking like, oh, I should be grateful that I know more than my professor and stuff like that. So, but it put me in the mindset. I'm like, okay, am I really getting everything that I need? And as far as knowledge is concerned, like I'm grateful for the school, like Columbia. Like I learned my fundamentals and stuff like that of design. Because there at the other school, I was mainly only learning, like when it came to graphic design classes, I was only learning the programs. And I wasn't learning stuff like typography or foundations of communication design and stuff like that. That happened when I got to Columbia. And by that time, like, I knew Photoshop. I knew some things of Illustrator and InDesign and everything. I knew the basics and stuff like that. I'm more so knew Photoshop because I have been using it way longer than before I started going into those classes. But it just felt like I didn't know enough, or I didn't get the critiques that I was looking for. Like there are tons of kids who are basically, sensitive to, like, feeling like their professor is a hater or something like that because they're getting a negative critique, or not necessarily negative, but like, there's some things wrong with their design and stuff like that. Like, there's some things that they should probably look forward to changing and stuff like that. I'm that person, like, no, like, let me know what's wrong with my stuff. Like, before I'm over here putting it out into the world, and next thing you know, like, somebody else tells me
right,
that it's trash and whatnot. So that's where, like, I look forward to learning a whole lot, because even now, like, there's still a whole bunch of stuff I don't know. Even just like when I was taking some of these boot camp classes and stuff like that for visual design and everything, and there's like, why are you in this class? I'm like, refresher. But I do see where that definitely applies to me, because, like, I honestly feel like there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a lifetime learner. I think wanting to learn things is great, but I think the part where you're discounting what you already know, and even when you say, like, this professor, I know more than them. There are plenty of people I work with who are like, I know more than them. And it just triggers that, like, I can actually do some of those things that I want to do. I can have some of those positions. That's why my default, when people are like, oh, you don't have enough experience, I'm like, y'all are crazy, because I know I do, because I know people who are in those roles before me or whatever the case and didn't have the kind of, there was a job that I applied to at my former institution that somebody else got who I know doesn't have the kind of background that I have in training. And I think I would have been a better fit, but I didn't even get an initial interview. And I just thought it was funny, but I don't default to, oh, I must need to do more in this area. I'm like, no, y'all crazy. And that's fine, because I got another job that I'm sure pays more, that is a better fit for, that still aligns with what I want to do. Mm-hmm. But I think just being in a space where you can say, yeah, I want to learn more, and there's always more for me to learn, but it doesn't mean that I'm not an expert. Being an expert doesn't mean you know everything, especially in a space where I think that there are only a handful of spaces where there should definitely be a very high level of, I've gotten this down pat. And that's if you're like a doctor, because you can't operate on me unless you get your stitches right, mm-hmm. all of that kind of stuff. But especially when you're working in a field that's very subjective, right? Like, you know a lot. And that's what I'm saying. There are some things you're going into where you're like, oh, I don't really know a lot about this. I need some help, or this person is going to teach me this. And it doesn't mean that you're not good at it. I work for people who I know more about in certain areas than they do. But it's also like the timing. When they came in, it wasn't certain things weren't a thing. Mm-hmm. And now they're a thing, but they're already in their roles. And so it is what it is. And so I don't think you should ever be in a space where you don't want to learn more, but also don't shortchange yourself, right? And don't feel like you got to meet every requirement. In that respect, I dig way deep into my white man mediocrity bag. I look at job descriptions and people are like, oh, should you apply? And be like, I look at the must have, and if it's 5 things and I meet 3 of them, I'm gonna apply. Like, worst case scenarios, they tell you no. Mm. And then you don't have the job, but you don't have the job if you don't apply. So I always ask myself, and it sounds so crazy, I'll say, like, if I go after this, will they shoot me in the head? And people are like, what? Exactly. See how ridiculous that sounds? The answer is always no. So why not go after it? Because the worst thing I can think of is that somebody would shoot me in the head for trying. And they're not going to shoot me in the head for trying. So why not? If it's not going to be the worst thing, then it definitely won't be the worst thing. Right? So that's how I kind of psych myself up sometimes to doing stuff. too. I mean, I wouldn't like jump off a building or something. Like, that's not gonna get me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the last imposter syndrome, or the last type of imposter, is the natural genius. Stuff comes easy, labeled as the smart one at an early age, hasn't really had to deal with adversity. As a result, they have adopted an irrational narrative that success should come quickly and easily. If something isn't accomplished on the first try, it is a failure. I think I used to be a lot more of the natural genius. Definitely academically. School was always easy. I got straight A's and I did not try. I was, and I don't say this in a conceited way. I know it sounds conceited. I was just naturally really smart. And I had a hunger to learn. My mama taught me stuff, at home, and I didn't struggle. I taught the other kids. I got concepts really easily. Mm-hmm. And I did not struggle academically until grad school. So honestly, anytime I did bad in high school, it's because I just really wasn't trying. And it was a concept that required effort. Like, I got B's because like I wasn't doing homework or wasn't reading. But I was in honors pre-calc. You had to read to learn it. I would like skim it and be like, okay, this is going to be the answer. So I was getting C's and B's because I wasn't really reading. But if I had actually just read and did the homework, I would have gotten A's. So I was so used to it being easy. And I've had some teachers who are just butts. I remember I took a publishing class my senior year of college as an elective, like a Microsoft publisher. Oh. Welcome to 2004. That's the class that I took. And my teacher was so particular. And it's funny because there are certain things like with design where I would do something, I'd be like, oh, this is cute. Because that's the mindset I take. She definitely had more of a mind like you, like, oh, it's not in this margin. And I'm like, but I would also look at it as a consumer. Like, if I was consuming this would be fine. I'm not looking at it from a designer perspective, but I was supposed to be looking at it from a designer perspective. But I'm looking at my friends would come to this party if I did this flyer, and they're coming. Like, that's what matters. And so I didn't do as well in that class because she was asking me to push my mind to a place. I was like, ma'am, I don't need this. And I mean, honestly, we didn't know at the time the way, things. It's not that publisher is irrelevant and doesn't exist. There are just so many other things that people use in place of. But anyway, I took the class. Was making personalized birthday cards for everybody.
Oh my God.
I'm shocked that it was a class, but also this was 2004, 2005. So it makes sense. That's what it was. Yeah. In design, they weren't doing that kind of stuff then. Not in high school. So I definitely think when I got to grad school, I remember there was a class. I got my first F in grad school. And let me tell you, when you have to pay $1,300 to fail a class, because I was paying for school, you only had to fail one time. I only had to fail one time. And it was technically on technicality. What ended up happening is I had the same professor who, for two different courses. And I had her a semester before, and then I had her, but the topic that she gave was very similar. So I took big excerpts. I got one paper I got in her class previews, I got an A. And I took big excerpts from that paper for a different paper, which was a similar topic. And she was like, it's plagiarism. I'm like, but it's my words.
Your paper.
She said I didn't cite myself because it was a different work. But I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, you didn't cite yourself. And I was just like, but I wrote it. So it's my thought. You gave me an A. I wrote it. And there were other words. It's not like I just turned in the second paper as the first. I didn't do that. But I did take say it was 10 pages. There were probably a good 3 or 4 pages that were from that paper. And she was like, no. And so I had the option to withdraw. Like she was going to fail me, even though all other work I did, or I could withdraw from the class, but it would be a WF or a WD, which is like withdraw failing. So it's like it's not going to count against your GPA, but there is a note. But I could retake the class and then I would get rid of that. So, but that ultimately just costs money because you passed the withdrawal deadline, whatever. So I withdrew from the class. I took it with somebody else later. Turned in that same paper, got an A. But I had a different instructor at that time. She was also like the department chair and all this other kind of stuff. But really, it was like only that one time where, and honestly, I remember taking an accounting class that year. I took accounting classes in college, but in grad school, it was different. And I had to study. I had to go to office hours, and it was hard because I was working full time. In class, I had to go to class on weekends. I was in study groups. I went to a tutoring center because it was hard. And it was something that I wasn't used to. And at that point, I was like 27. So I had made it through my entire academic career. Really, it wasn't that I didn't study, because I did. But when people were like, oh my God, I studied so hard, I got to see, and you see like that, what's that, like lean on me, like that, like we had to I was not that kid. Things just really came easily to me. So sometimes I found like when it doesn't, I get frustrated really easily. I
think for me, like in my earlier years, like school came easy to me outside of math. I mean, of course, I did good in like grade school math and whatnot, but like for the most part, like I was the person who always got A's and a B in math. And then like they started doing like, my mom started putting me in like different programs and stuff like that. Like University of Chicago had this PEP, a college upward bound program that was mostly slated for like I think either high school kids or 8th grade and up and stuff like that. I was the only 4th grader in that. Well, one of the few 4th graders in that class, where we were learning like calculus and stuff like that. And like we actually had to be on campus at University of Chicago and whatnot. And it was only for like gifted students and whatnot. And then I would say like after a while, like I really hated school. Because like I was a kid who always got picked on and always ended up having to fight somebody. So it wasn't the fact that I didn't like learning or anything like that. It's the fact that I just hated being at school. Like anytime my mom would like, have me do a book report, I'm like, yo, granted it was, she paid me for it. Like you read a book, you did a report to prove that you comprehended everything that you read. That was my summer job. And whatnot.
Oh, that's what you did in the summer. I was like,
yeah, but not like she had me doing speed reading classes and stuff like that.
I was like, we're not paying our kids to do their homework.
No, it was like a summer thing. But
you do your homework or you be out in these streets.
But yeah, I think it was like later on, like that's when I like high school, definitely like freshman, sophomore year of high school, I hated going to class. Like the only thing I really enjoyed was band, and that's one of the things that I passed. Because like during that time, like was that freshman and sophomore year of high school, I only passed band and lunch. Everything else was F.
How do you pass? How do you fail lunch?
You don't go.
I guess it's different. We had off-campus lunch and everything. So nobody was looking for you for lunch. You do whatever you want to do.
Oh no. Mm-mm.
Yeah, we have to do whatever you want to do for lunch. Just be here for class.
But yeah, like, but also like like now, like when I think back on it, like how that school was in comparison to the school that I graduated from, there was nothing exciting about that school, like besides, hanging out with friends and all that stuff like that. There was nothing really that made you want to go and made you want to learn or anything like that. Because like a lot of the stuff just seemed like it was dead end and everything like that. And I'm like, shoot, I can just go ahead and be a professional tenor sax player.
So do you think but going to for the natural genes, it doesn't have to be academic. It could be anything. Like, do you think that that's an imposter syndrome that you suffer from? It doesn't have to be academic.
For the most part, yeah. Like even with just writing and everything like that. Like I said, somebody had to tell me that I could write, or like design and everything like that. They was like, no, you have very, very good ideas and everything like that. Or
well, the natural genius is like stuff comes easily for you, like, and it's like you recognize it. So it's like either it's great, like if you stuff comes easily, so you expect to get it the first time, and if you don't get it the first time, then you failed. That's like what the natural genius is. It's like I know this, I got it, I don't need help. But if it's not that, then everything else is a failure. So it's kind of like not giving yourself the space to say, I can learn this or progress to this.
I don't know. The only reason why I even went to academics is because you were talking about school.
Right. But I was talking about school because for me, that's what it was. Like, I liked school, but I was good at it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was saying. For me, it was a natural genius. I didn't have to try. Like, it was like I was really good at it, but talking about how that carried on into my life. So like sometimes like I expect that I get it right away. And if I don't, I'm very hard on myself if I don't get things right away, because I have trained my mind to believe that I'm really smart. I went to gifted classes, and not just, especially if things are supposed to be logical, and if it's supposed to make logical sense. So that translates to my work. Right. So outside of school, that translates to my work. I do expect that I get things right away. And don't always extend myself the grace to learn a new skill or concept. And that's why, like, say when you're trying to teach me how to use Premiere Pro, I would get frustrated when I couldn't get it, and I didn't want to ask you for help because I just felt like I should know how to do this. No, I've never taken a class. No, I have no kind of background in training, but that's what it is. So that's why it's an imposter syndrome, because I expect even something that I have no training in, no prior knowledge of, that I should know it. Because I'm naturally good at stuff. Not rational. I get that. But you see, like, that's why I would get so frustrated when you're like teaching me, because I'm like, why don't I get that? Why can't I? But it was something that I allowed myself to practice and to learn. And then when I got stuff, I got really excited about it because I was like, okay, I get it. But I was not getting it for a long time. And when I wasn't getting it, what was my initial thought? Could you just do this for me? Because it's frustrating me that I'm not getting it. So that's kind of like what that's that thought. Like, I get stuff. And so when I don't, it's trash. It's failure because I'm not getting it. Because I don't get it right off the bat. And that's clearly... And it doesn't go for everything, right? There are some things that I'm willing to learn. When I first started doing makeup, I mean, at the time, my friends loved it. I look back at old pictures, I'm like, gosh, y'all just let me put whatever on y'all face. But it was something that over time, you learn different skills, and I learned how to do it, really well. And not only like, do you know how techniques, but you learn how to do it quicker. And so like, oftentimes, although I don't do makeup a lot, like people pay me not for like how fast I could do or whatever. That's why it's a quality. And the fact that I can do it in less time. Like it usually take me like 45 minutes to do my makeup. Now, if I'm doing something really complicated, or if I'm having a bad eyebrow day, it might, but I can easily do my makeup in 20 minutes and have a full done face. If I'm like keeping it basic and still look really nice, because I've practiced so much, I know exactly what I should do, especially for my own face, because I know the contours of my own face. I know what I need to do and the steps and the order in which I need to do it. So that's kind of the natural genius. So I thought this was an interesting topic because, again, we had mentioned imposter syndrome before, but to really talk about these parts. And so if you had to pick the top two, right? Because I know there are some that you identify with some aspects of it, but which would you say? Actually, let's do it this way. Which two do you think pertain to me the most? And then I'll tell you which two I think pertain to you the most. Do 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 do.
Natural genius.
Okay.
Soloist.
Me?
Superwoman.
Okay.
Natural genius and Superwoman.
I agree. I think for you, perfectionist, I don't even need to look at that one. And I'm gonna say expert. I'm gonna say those two are the top two, and I just think encouraging everyone who feels like they may suffer from any one, I would say go follow Steven Lewis. It's Steven Lewis MFT. I'll link it in the description. Check out his Instagram, and he's, like I said, he's a psychotherapist, and he talks a lot about like how to combat imposter syndrome and things to do. And I think I was happy in having this discussion because there are things that I recognize. I think when I first kind of learned about imposter syndrome, that was very heavy on me. And since I've done some work where I can see, okay, yes, I may still identify as a superwoman, but there are some of these that don't resonate with me in the way that they did before. But definitely, and how it can change. I think for me going into this new role, it definitely started making me feel like, do I belong here? And having to like remind myself all the time, like, you belong here. Like you worked to be here, and don't diminish your accomplishments, and, big up yourself and continue to move toward progress, right? It's all about the progress. You can always continue to move toward progress and really acknowledge that you deserve to be in the rooms that you're in. And there's nothing wrong with getting better at things. But one thing that I'm learning, and I think that you can learn in terms of like the perfectionist aspect, is like not confusing good with perfect. And sometimes we use those interchangeably, and it can be like, yeah, this is good, and it doesn't mean it's perfect. And going back to your own definition, which I thought was just amazing, your own definition is that perfection is unattainable. So stop trying to attain what you have determined to be unattainable. I mean, unless it's me, in which you got perfection. You disagree?
No.
He's saying that under duress. It's okay.
What?
So yeah, I thought this was a good topic, and like one I'm really gonna try to keep in mind this next week. Week 2 in the new job, where I'm trying to just remind myself that I deserve to be in these spaces, just do what I need to do, and not kind of like downplay the roles that I take, but also feel like I don't need to do everything. Working on delegating things and not overcommitting. I found myself doing it my first day. My boss was already telling me like overcommitting to things. Like before I took the time to like learn stuff, I was like, yeah, I'll do that. We can work on that, and committing to projects already. So
true. For me, I know I need to start slowing down to a certain degree. Like even in that part, because like I'm quick to say yes to a project without really understanding like the full like, because they're telling me stuff at like face value and telling me what they need, but I'm like, in grand scheme of things, once we have a conversation, you need something totally different,
right? And just and being able to say that, be like, oh, this sounds like something I could potentially be interested. Let's set aside time to give full details before I commit.
Indeed.
Anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Nope.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining us. If you're not already, make sure that you're following us on social media at If It Is in Love Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. It's at If It Is in Love PO1 on Twitter. We're trash on Twitter. So follow us on Instagram and of course on YouTube, If It Is in Love Podcast. So if you're listening to this, know that you can watch it and you can see me in all my bonnet glory and my boo over here. And his I used to be a people person, then people ruined it t-shirt. So if you want to see us in all of our glory, you want to see our new setup, watch this on the YouTubes. So yeah, if you have any questions, comments, brand deals, you can email us at ifitisnlovepodcast@gmail.com. I forgot that as I was saying it. I forgot it. So with no further ado, we'll catch y'all next week. Bye.